Hello, I think I lost it for a while. Now we are all back. Sheila ji, I would request Mrs. Sheila Reddy to kindly begin her address to us, and we are all ears. We want to hear what you have to say. I was talking about your book, which was highly recommended and abroad also, and it's being now published in several languages, I believe, in Hindi, Marathi, and films have been brought out on this. So we'd like to hear more about Sarojini Naidu from you, and of course about your book gradually. Thank you, Sheila ji. I welcome you to this program. Please start. Thank you.
Very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yeah. So I want to first of all explain what is my relationship. What is the author of a book on the Jinnahs doing, talking about Sarojini Naidu, and this is how my relationship with her evolved. You see, I was writing a book on the Jinnah's marriage, and I discovered that Sarojini Naidu was a very close friend of both Jinnah and Rati Jinnah. So I had to go through Padmaja Naidu's correspondence in order to find out more about what was happening in Rati and Jinnah's life. But through Padmaja Naidu's correspondence, I entered Sarojini Naidu's correspondence. Because what happened is, in the years that my book was concerned with, which is from 1900 to 1930-ish, Sarojini Naidu was spending a lot of time, especially from the time of the Jinnah's marriage, 1980, in Bombay. She had left Hyderabad, and she had more or less taken up permanent residence in Bombay. She had a suite of rooms in the Taj Mahal Hotel, from where she ran her the whole Congress party from there. She was at that time the president of the Bombay Congress. And the Bombay Congress was actually the National Congress, because political life at that time was centered in Bombay and not in Delhi, as it later became. So she had to move to Bombay in order to be at the center of the political stage. And it so happened that when you might not know this, but Jinnah fell in love with a Parsi girl who was 24 years junior to him. And she was the daughter and heiress, only daughter and heiress of a very, very rich Parsi plutocrat, almost like a prince. They lived in a castle and so on. And they had a kind of runaway marriage, because it was Rati's father had put a court case against Jinnah, so he couldn't meet her. So Rati had to walk out of her home with nothing but an umbrella and a dog, and go across the street to Jinnah, who also lived on Malabar Hill, and get married by Muslim rites. And when this happened, it created a huge scandal, as you can imagine, in all of India, not just in Bombay, but the whole of India got involved. Undivided India got involved in that controversy, with the Parsis excommunicating Rati for having converted and married, and Jinnah getting it from both the father as well as the Parsi community. Now, Sarojini Naidu at this time was accused of having stage managed this marriage, because she was so close to both of them and was a confidant of both of them. So, but as it turned out through my research, I found out that she was not really privy to it. In fact, Rati's parents asked Sarojini Naidu to talk to Rati to persuade her not to marry Jinnah. But she was not listening to anyone, and she just ran away and got married. Now, the thing is that after Rati married Jinnah, she got excommunicated by her society, and she was very lonely and cut off from everyone she knew, except Sarojini Naidu was very broad-minded. And so Rati lent very heavily on her. So it happened that throughout the years of her marriage, she used to go almost every morning to Sarojini's suite of rooms in Taj Mahal and stay there till it was time to pick up. She would drop Jinnah off at his chambers, go to Sarojini's hotel room, stay there the whole day, and then go back only to pick up Jinnah and go home. So you can imagine how much Sarojini had to say about the daily life and intimacies of Rati Jinnah. And it so happened that Rati was almost the same age as Padmaja Naidu, her older daughter. So Sarojini Naidu had early made a habit when she had taken on a very heavy political life that she would write a letter every day home so that she would not feel disconnected from her children. So it so happened that almost every day there's a mention of Rati, because Rati is a common friend of both Padmaja and her mother. So, you know, Rati did this and Rati's cat did that, or Rati's feeling unhappy and Rati's feeling isolated, poor Rati, and Rati's getting fat, Rati's getting thin, Rati's pregnant. All this went on. So because I needed to find out more about Rati Jinnah, that is the only reason I went into Sarojini Naidu's correspondence. But once I got into, and this is a very, very voluminous correspondence, because all through her life, she must have written at least 2-3 letters a day. And you can imagine how many files and files and files of letters there are, kilos of it actually. And these are all lying in the Nehru Memorial Library. So I went through all of them, and I became very well versed in Sarojini's life as a result of it. Because when you're reading letters, you're getting to know a person very intimately. Before that, my idea of Sarojini Naidu was like everybody else's, just some, you know, orator of some very high-flown oratory and poetry that's very dated. And somehow she was not a figure I could relate to. She seemed like something out of a calendar picture or something. She didn't seem real to me. So, but reading her letters, I got a very different picture of what this woman was really like. I couldn't have asked for a better way to engage with Sarojini Naidu. Now, because Sarojini is so important as a character in my book, when I went to Hyderabad, I tried to search for more letters in case they were not there in her archive in the Nehru Library. So I went looking for this archive of a Sarojini Naidu Memorial Trust. I had heard about it. And I was given an address, and I went there. And this is not the golden threshold as people think, but it was actually her father's house, which had been turned into a trust. And there were some directors of it and so on who had passed away long ago, and the trust had gone to the government. When a trust goes to the government, it goes to the endowments uh, department. So when I went to the site, I found nothing but little shops. There were some biryani shops, and there were some, some chai shops and other kinds of mobile shops, that kind of thing inside a compound. And I saw a lawyer's office. So I went there to ask, where is this Sarojini Naidu trust? It has an office here. So he said, हाँ था यहाँ पर एक मगर बारिश में गिर गया. So I said, oh my goodness. So what happened to the papers and books in there? So he said, oh, I think a truck came and took them all away somewhere. So I had to get hold of an endowment officer who comes once a month to collect the rent from all these people. And I tracked him down somewhere in Hyderabad in some temple. He was sitting and, counting the donations to that temple. And I asked him, can you show me where these papers are? What have you all done with her papers and her books? So he said that he gave me the keys and he sent somebody with me, and we walked a couple of streets away to the Anaj Mandi of Hyderabad. And inside that, there's a dharamshala, which is meant for, farmers who come to sell their daily sabji at the market, and they have nowhere to go, so they stay at the dharamshala. So the endowments, the department had taken a couple of rooms from in the dharamshala and stuffed all these papers and photographs and books. Very valuable books, because as Vijay Kumar told you yesterday, all their private collection, both Sarojini's and her father's, were there. And these were all locked up and, just bundled up and put into this thing. So my other connection with this was when I wrote my book and I came to Hyderabad, I talked of this to the press. And I talked of this to the government. So as a result of that, we have managed to move the papers from the Anaj Mandi, and they are now with the state archives, which is now documenting all their things to find out what it is. And the trust has been recreated, and I'm a member of it as far as I know. So in a way, I'm telling you this as an introduction to my connection with Sarojini Naidu. So having said that, I want to go on to talk about the woman herself. And I'll begin by saying that almost, I think from the time she was born, there was a heavy weight of expectations on her infant shoulders. And this is because, partly because of her father. Her father, Agornath Chattopadhyay, was this very, very amazing man. And Sarojini Naidu was quite right when she said he's the most learned person in India. She was not wrong. He was a brilliant scientist, and he was actually the first Indian to get a doctorate in science from Edinburgh University. And even before the two famous scholars from Calcutta, which is Bose and before Prafulla Kumar, he was the one who got his degree. And it was expected that he would make great progress in chemistry. But instead, he had other interests. and which was that he was a social reformer of sorts. Unlike other scientists of his generation, who preferred to stay quiet so that they could get on with their science work, he was a person who was tremendously interested in politics and in social reform. So when the Nizam of Hyderabad invited him, having learned about what a learned man he was, and the Nizam was interested in opening higher education in Hyderabad state. So he invited him to head the education department. So Agornath Chattopadhyay came to Hyderabad and left his chemistry research, for which he had got 2 scholarships in Edinburgh. He was that brilliant. But he left all that and came to Hyderabad, and he started a school first. He started dabbling with alchemy, but most of all, he started involving himself in politics. And as a result of his politics, he got on the wrong side of the British resident because he opposed some railway project the British was building in Hyderabad state. And so he was thrown out of Hyderabad, although he was a great favorite with the Nizam. But a few years later, he was able to return. So basically, 1 year after Agornath Chattopadhyay returned from Edinburgh and moved to Hyderabad with his wife, who also is a very interesting person. She was this. He met her first when he was 14, and she was a 9-year-old girl and very beautiful, and he fell in love with her. And he pursued her and got married to her. And when he went to Edinburgh, she was put in the Arya Samaj, in the care of the Brahmo Samaj thing to study while he went abroad. And before he went abroad, he was part of a group of very revolutionary youths of his caste. Kulin Brahmins or something they were called. And these Brahmins were going around the countryside rescuing women from marrying old men, or even men who are about to die, or widows, and then putting them up in a kind of orphanage they built for them, where they were giving them education. So he was already a very controversial man. So when he had this daughter a year after coming to Hyderabad, you can imagine the weight of expectations on this little baby, because she was the first of 8 children to follow. And she was a girl, which was better news for Agornath Chattopadhyay, because all his reforms were related to women. So he was determined that his daughter would prove to the world, would fulfill all the dreams and potential that was expected of Agornath. He expected the daughter to fulfill. And now the thing is, he was a very, very smart girl. Can you hear me? Hello? Am I audible?
Yes, you can hear
Yes,
us. Go
yes.
ahead.
I would request Chameli ji to mute herself. Chameli ji, please mute yourself. We can't hear Sheila ji. Yeah, please.
Yeah, so he, till the age of about 12, she was maybe up to 14, you could say. She was her father's darling. There could be no person who bent to his will as willingly as the girl child did. He was training her, grooming her to be some great mathematician or a scientist. He wanted her to be all that he wasn't. So he forced her into learning mathematics and science because she was to be this great Nobel laureate or whatever. So, but her heart was not in it, but because she was so close to her father and she adored her father, she did study both these things. And as Vijay Kumar was saying yesterday, it was while she was doing her algebra that one poem occurred to her, and she started writing this poem down. So it was like her poetry was an escape from her father's expectations of her. And when she
I would request, sorry, Sheila ji, I would request everyone to mute themselves. Shell Balaji, please mute yourself. It's not looking good. Please mute yourself. Shell Balaji. Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that, Sheila ji. Please.
not called. So till the age of 10 or something, till the age of 8, her education was in Urdu and Bengali. She only spoke Urdu and Bengali. But at the age of 9, he decided that she has to speak in English because her future lay in English. And she couldn't pick it up as quickly as he wanted. So he dictated that and he locked her up in a room upstairs saying that I won't let you down till you start speaking in English. And this little girl actually came down the stairs and from that day onwards ceased to speak anything but English to her father and her mother. Her mother was being a more real person and a woman. She refused to speak back to her in English and kept talking to her either in a mother tongue or in Hindi, but not in English. She wouldn't talk to her in English. But Sarojini mostly talked only in English to her parents. Now, at the age of 12, he decided she was ready to take the matriculate exam. Now, the thing is that there was no center for matriculate exam in Hyderabad state at that time because there was no high school as yet there. So she had to go to Madras to take the exam. She went there, took the exam, and came out first in that exam. It was possibly the first time that a woman was taking the exam, but she was first on it. So you can imagine how this cast her into the national limelight. Here was this girl who was bold enough to do the matriculation exam, and that too at the age of 12, and then come out first in the whole Madras presidency. So she came back fulfilling her father's early hopes of her. Now, once she came to Hyderabad, she was in an awkward position because actually 12 was the legal age for marriage at that time. And everybody else around her was in Parda. She was the only person out of Parda because there was no society out for women outside of Parda. And she spent those 2 years after her matriculation writing poetry, not knowing what to do with herself. And around this time, a young doctor, also from educated in Edinburgh, started frequenting Agonath's house. Agonath's house was like this open house. Everybody came, all sorts of people from high and low came, and he held court there. And this young doctor who was the son of a doctor himself and had been educated abroad, had been employed in the Nizam's army. So he was a respectable man with a respectable job, and he proceeded to fall in love with Sarojini, and Sarojini returned his feelings. She was around that time, must be 14. So he did the regular thing, which is go to the father and ask for a hand in marriage. So you can imagine the consternation in Agornath Chatterjee's life when he heard that his daughter was going to wanted to get married. That was not in his plans for his daughter. He hadn't thought about it. The first thing he said to Dr. Naidu was, does my daughter know of this proposal? So the doctor said that, no, I'm coming to you first. So he went, Agornath Chattopadhyay went straight to his wife and asked her about it. And it seems that the mother had already divined the daughter's heart. And she knew that her daughter was in love with this doctor. So they decided that this is not good enough. Some people think it's because Govind Rajalu was from a different caste, because he was a Naidu and these people were Bengali Brahmins. But that was not the case, because if you see, I think all of Sarojini's 7 siblings went on to marry out of the caste. Nobody married a Bengali Brahmin, as far as I know. And a couple of them married foreigners. So it seems to me that it was basically that the father was disappointed that his daughter, whom he had put all his hopes on, was going to marry and sink into domesticity, which is not what he wanted of her. So she was sent away from home to Sholapur to separate her from her suitor. And it's interesting when you read her letters around this time, it's not, she writes love poems about her lover in the way of Elizabeth Barrett Browning, that kind of thing. But her real sorrow was losing her father's approval. You know, she used to be the sun of his life, and suddenly she had fallen into his disfavor. And that was something she couldn't tolerate. So she seems to have had some kind of a mental breakdown there because of this whole conflict that must have raged within her about where did her future lie. She was a modern woman, but a modern woman was a thing apart. She belonged neither to the Parda world nor to the larger world of men. So where was she to go? What was she to do? Around this time, the Nizam came through with a very promising offer. He gave a scholarship to her to go abroad and study in Cambridge. And Agornath Chattopadhyay seized this opportunity. He thought, you know, if she went abroad, she would make something of herself instead of just getting married and sinking into domesticity, which is something he didn't want for this brilliant daughter of his. So she went abroad. She was miserable, of course, because her father had exiled her, so to speak. She continued to write to her young doctor, but she was more interested in winning back the favor of her father, either to this purpose or whether she had her father's ambition inside her. She started networking in London and meeting all the happening people in the literature world and showed her poems to them. One of them, of course, is Edmund Gosse, and the other is Arthur Symons. These were very powerful people at that time. They controlled the opinion of the literary world in London. And I remember reading in Edmund Gosse's introduction to Sarojini Naidu's poems that when he first got the poems from her, he was appalled. they were so bad according to him. He was embarrassed to tell her how bad they were. But she was an extraordinary person even then, and her presence made a deep impression on anyone she met. Although she was so young, only 16 or 17, she radiated a certain presence which was magnetic. And this was, she seemed, according to Arthur Simmons' description, somebody who stood alone and judged them all. She was very quiet. She hardly spoke. When she spoke in a very low voice. And she watched. She was very wise. She was very mature for her age. And because of this, a friendship grew between Edmund Gosse and her. And he was able to give her the right advice, which is go back home and write poetry that's more authentically Indian instead of writing this, copycat verse of copying English verse. So she took his advice. By this time, she was 19. She did not complete her degree in Cambridge, but instead went home. And by this time, her father had given up on her and allowed her to get married. So she had this big marriage, and just to prove her father wrong, she refused to sink into domesticity. Within the first year of her marriage, she had her first child, and in the next 4 years proceeded to have 3 more children. She had 2 boys and 2 girls. But this didn't stop her. And then she also had a very active social life. She used to run a weekly salon in her home, to which everybody came. And anybody visiting Hyderabad state from anywhere had heard of her because she was so famous. So they'd come over to her house. And so she was very much a prima donna in Hyderabadi society, even though she had sunk into domesticity as her father saw it. But almost immediately after her first son was born, she did not rest in Hyderabad. She started traveling, and she went to first to Calcutta. And one of the things she did was to take the poems she had already managed to publish here and there in journals. And her father's name opened a lot of doors in Calcutta because he was a very well-known person there. And so she got introductions to all of them and started showing them her poems and meeting them and that kind of thing. She also attended the National Congress there, I think in 1899 or 1900 in Calcutta. And she kept writing her poems and having her children and enjoying her life in Hyderabad, all the pleasures of Hyderabad, rather guiltily, as if, she's not entitled to just be a woman enjoying her life, but that she had some destiny to fulfill. So she collected enough poems, and with an introduction from Edmund Gosse, managed to publish this poem book, first book of poetry in England in 1905. And to everyone's surprise, I'm sure, even to Edmund Gosse's, this book was an instant bestseller. It went on, within days, there was a second edition of it, and even the second edition was sold out. It was written about in all the English papers because it was so unusual to have a Indian, and that to a woman, writing in English. and writing, verse which was on par with what they were writing in England at that time. As Nizam Ezekiel said, poetry at that time was going through its lowest ebb, where a certain kind of pretty poetry was dominating the Victorian scene. So her poems were very highly praised in the London literary world. And as happens in every colonial society, because it had been so highly praised in the London papers, it became very popular in India as well. So Sarojini Naidu became suddenly one of the most, she was already a very famous person, but her fame grew manyfold after the publishing of her first book of poetry. Now, it's interesting, but it's because people, I heard somebody ask yesterday, which did she love more, poetry or the national movement? I think poetry opened the doors of her participation in the national movement. Without her poetry, I don't think people would have known her as well as they did. You have to understand that she was easily the biggest celebrity, either in men or women at that time. And when Gokhale, who at that time was collecting people in order to harness them for the freedom struggle, when he met her in 1903, he wanted her to be one of the leaders who he could depend on. So he told her, he made her promise that she would henceforth harness all her talent, all her gifts, all her energy, all her dedication, everything she had, all her songs, everything to the motherland, as he called it. And you can imagine how this would have thrilled Sarojini Naidu, searching for a larger purpose for her life. She had never been content with just being a mother and a housewife, or even, occasionally traveling to give speeches, or just being a published poet. She wanted to be, I remember reading somewhere that when she was a little child, she would climb up on a chair and gather her brothers and sisters around her and start giving them rousing speeches. And she said somewhere in a recollection to someone that when I was young, I was so priggish. I couldn't sleep a single day without asking myself the question, have I changed the world? So she was a very ambitious person to do something great. And her fame came as another way to open doors for her. Now, this is the interesting thing about Sarojini Naidu, that she was hugely valuable to the national leaders in early nationalism. Partly, of course, because she was a woman and there was no other living example of a woman who could stand up and say, I'm equal to any woman in the world. And here was a woman boldly saying it, that, you bring them on, we are as equal as anybody else. And the other thing was, she was very good at inspiring youth by her rousing speeches. Then she was also an excellent ambassador of Hindu-Muslim unity because of her own background. Agornath Chattopadhyay was one of the most, he used to dress like a Mohammedan, and he had a long beard, and he would dress in the Muslim costume, and he had a lot of very good friends who were Muslims, and there were constantly Muslims coming to their house. So it was a very Ganga Jamun culture in the world she grew up in. So she was excellent at building bridges between Hindus and Muslims. And because of her marriage and her background, she was a very cosmopolitan person. So she was a very good embodiment of what the future Indian would be like. Somebody who's a national, who's an Indian rather than a Brahmin or a woman or a, something else, a Naidu or whatever. She was an Indian first and foremost. So she had a valuable role to play in the early part of the freedom struggle, partly because she was such a good orator, as Vijay Kumar said yesterday. I was reading a recollection of somebody who saw her in 1899, who saw her speaking. And at that time, she was looking nervously at her notes, and she, although when she went on the stage, she spoke for 1 hour without notes, but she was still nervous enough in those early years about what is she going to say. But later on, she could speak for 2 hours without any notes and speak in such rousing terms that the whole audience would be stirred up and ready to join the struggle. She went to Oxford to give the speech at the state hosting competition. And Chagla, who at that time was the head of the students' union, he asked her for a speech so that it could be printed out. And she said, "Oh, I don't have a speech. I'm just going to talk extempore." And he looked a little worried. So she patted him on the hand and said, "Oh, don't worry. There's nothing to be worried about. I'll do it properly." And indeed, even for when she was the president of the National Congress, she would give a speech without writing it down. And there was one Congress session where somebody else was speaking, and the governor of Bengal came into the venue. And immediately the organizers bumped off the speaker who was speaking then and pushed Sarojini on the stage, because everyone was so proud of her fluency, her oratory, and everybody wanted to show off, look, we have a leader like this who can speak so well, who's so confident, who's not afraid of anything. And naturally, because of her ambition and her hard work and her talents and her background, she became very, very powerful in the Congress. So she was part of, when Gandhi came on the scene, she became his right-hand person. She became the president of the Bombay Congress. And you would expect somebody who was that successful in a man's world to somehow ditch the women's agenda. That's what usually happens with women who succeed in the men's world. They become equal with men and somehow forget that they are also women. But she took advantage of her position at the helm of Congress in order to promote women's issues, women's rights issues. She was pressing for agenda in the main Congress about, widow rights and, widow education and different things in order to improve the condition of women. She led a delegation of women to the Secretary of State Montague when he came to India in 1917, in order to press for women's vote. The English were very, very impressed with her because they thought if the freedom movement had women like her, it was indeed a very fortunate moment because there was nobody to compare with her in terms of her maturity, her confidence, her effectiveness. The interesting thing about her is that once she had made it in the men's world, sorry, somebody's thing is on.
Excuse me, Hemaji. Hemaji, please mute yourself. Hemaji.
So I'll just ignore her. This, so she, I was saying that interestingly, with women who make it in the men's world, they forget, they discard their feminine side. Somehow, some as if they have something to prove. But here was a woman who was so comfortable in her skin. I remember reading somewhere that Margaret Cousins, I think, says of her that when she was going to meet Montague in order to press for women's vote, she was not talking of the agenda because she was confident of what she wanted to say. But she talked to Margaret Cousins about the color of the sari she's going to wear. And Margaret Cousins must have been taken aback because she talked of, this silver, moonlit kind of sari on a blue background. And she was like that. There was nowhere she would go where she wouldn't dress in these bright, colorful saris. In fact, when Gandhi declared the Khadi revolution in the the non-cooperation movement,
Yeah.
Everybody docilely agreed to wear what she called looking like Dobie's bundles in, all these white, heavy, thick kaddar saris. But she argued with Gandhi and said that after all, silk is handloom. So why can't I wear silk? So she started wearing her brightest Kanjivaram and Dharmavaram and all these saris. And she refused to wear pale colors and would upbraid women when they wore white or pale colors. When Gandhi was breaking his fast in prison, she's recorded as wearing a purple color sari, and she was very fond of jewelry and flowers in her hair and, adorning herself. And Gandhi, when he used to get some presents which he couldn't use, was so fond of Sarojini and her joy in these pretty things. He would keep passing them on to her. And in her letters, there are many mentions. So he gave me this something, some coral necklace or something else, and because it's too bright for him, and that kind of thing. As we were discussing yesterday, she was mistress of herself enough to be able to use humor in her dealings, even in very serious situations where she was the only woman in a gathering of men. She felt free to crack jokes and, pull even Gandhi's leg. And I remember once she joked to him that, Mrs. Jinnah was somebody who created a scandal because she started wearing sleeveless blouses with a sari. And this created quite a shock in the khadi-clad Congress, because she'd come in these sleeveless blouses with and these see-through saris, which created quite a scandal. So when Gandhi took to the Langoti, Sarojini went up to him and said, "You and Rati are in competition to see who's wearing less clothes," she said. And Gandhi only laughed at her. So she had that kind of relationship with all the leaders, you know. There was no formality about her. So I'm saying this as her keeping her feminine side, even when she succeeded in a male world. And then I want to talk about her. Is my time over, you think? Should I be
yeah, I mean, we also have a little bit of discussion sort of, so we would like you to, if you can finish 2-3 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, so I want to say that there was a price to pay for succeeding in a man's world.
True.
And she paid that price. She lived a very full and rich life. She lived it with great joy de vivre. All that is there, but she also paid a price for it. And in this, it was her loneliness, her isolation. There was always a craving to be part of the parda, the other side of the parda, where she had a lot of heartache about her children, who she didn't spend much time with them when they were children. But when they were a little older, they all went to boarding school and so on. And she tried very hard to balance her work life with her maternal duties. But obviously, there's nothing like being a stay-at-home mom for children. So she had a lot of heartache where her children were concerned. The eldest one was the most rebellious. He ran away from home when he was 14. He had a lot of head-on collisions with his mother. He had a better relationship with his father. But later on in his life, she made it. And the younger son turned something into a drunkard. And he was a sad disappointment for her. Only one of the 4 children she was really close to, and that was Padmaja Naidu. And she adored this daughter. And even in the middle of her political work, at the height of it, when Padmaja Naidu was diagnosed with tuberculosis, she dropped everything. She didn't ask permission from anyone. She said, "I don't care. I don't care about anything else." She left everything, took the first train to Hyderabad, took her daughter, admitted her into a sanatorium, and kept her there. So,
Sheila, sorry to interrupt. Can we now wind up so that we can have some discussion, and so that we can, then we can talk about the details.
I hereby inaugurate this session, and I wish you all great success, and also looking forward for such many more programs. And I
very far from
speaker
the
with Shiva. I think she's
Ushaji, I think you are on. Usha Nair. Mrs. Usha Nair?
I hope that all the members.
Ushaji, can you? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, please go on, Sheila. I muted her.
She died alone, far from home.
Yeah, that's such a great revelation. So thank you so much, Sheilaji. I mean, you have told us so many things we didn't know about her personality. Such a colorful personality she was. But the bouquets and brickbats and the heartaches and the joys of life, they go together. That's what we see in her, a very realistic person. I thank you so much for your elaborate talk on this and throwing so much light. We can quickly, discuss this. If someone has anything to say further on this anymore, I'm also grateful to you for throwing light on this aspect of the sources that were found in the Anaj Mandi, because that was a big puzzle for everyone, to where was all this correspondence lying in dust and all that in a small room. So how it landed, thank you for revealing that to us. Thank you so much. I think Chandraprabha ji, you can quickly ask a few things and then we want to move on. Chandraprabha ji?
Jutika,
Yeah,
can I say
please.
something?
Yes. Half a minute each. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Chandraprabha ji, boliye.
So, basically, I have read, this is not about Sarojini, this is about your book, Jinnah, Mr. and Mrs. Jinnah. A copy of this book is in our library, MCM library, Margaret Cousins library, and I happened to find it. And something about the blurb interested me. And I think you have written about life of Rati, which is, I think, the greatest tragedy I have ever read. You are talking about Sarojini's loneliness. Think about Rati's loneliness. Amazing.
Thank you, Prabhaji. Thank you for that comment. Mathili ji, you have something? Mathili?
Dr. Sheila, for that wonderful presentation. And it reminded me of an incident described by Sarojini Naidu, how she first met Mahatma Gandhi. She was in England, and it was a very historic day when World War I had broken out, 28 July 1914. And she climbed a whole lot of steps in Kensington just to meet the Mahatma. And there was an open door. She was sitting on the floor, clad in a dhoti and a bald head, eating chana for breakfast. So because she had a sense of humor, she laughed out loudly. Gandhiji looked up and said, "Oh, you must be Sarojini Naidu." Nobody can be reverent. And they all laughed together. Then you offered her some chana. And that was her first meeting.
That's a very famous incident. Thank you, Mathili. Thank you. That was such a great addition. We all are. Yeah, that's so much fun. Thank you, Sheila ji. I think we didn't have enough of you. I'm sure we want more, but maybe next time. I'm sure for such a lecture, 1 hour or 45 minutes is not enough. Actually, we lost out on 20 minutes connections and all that. So we want to have you again. With those words, I really thank you. Thank you for being with us and throwing so much light on the life of one of the greatest ladies of our times, and eternally grateful to you for that. I would now take permission to move ahead with the program. I would request Supriya, if you can introduce the next speaker. We are going to have the speech. Sheila, you would love to hear that. The annual speech that she gave in the AIWC.
Yeah, if our president Sheila ji wants to say something now that her connection is fine, or
okay,
yeah.
Don't. I can always say, but Reddy ji for it on the, maybe I say, on the eve of New Year. It was wonderful to know so many things about our dear leader, Sarojini ji. Wonderful. Thank you very much. And thank you, Supriya, for introducing her to us. Thanks a lot. Yeah, let us go on.
I'm fortunate to get her. Yeah. In fact, the next item on the agenda is the presidential report that one of the, annual conference of 1930, where Sarojini Naidu presented it in exemplar manner. Rama is going to read it. Rama Devi Anantaram. I would just call her as Rama, who's, as we know her, is an executive committee member of our Hyderabad branch and has worked at the center as MIC. in various capacities, and her last responsibility has been the zonal organizer. She is a nutrition expert, runs an NGO, and is a consultant to several organizations and hospitals. Incidentally, Rama knows today's speaker very well, Sheila Reddy ji. So, Rama, over to you.
Good evening, friends. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, Sheila. Supriya. Sheila Reddy has been a friend, and Hyderabad is very proud of her. From a young girl who's been bunking colleges and going for movies in morning shows in Tivoli to a national celebrity, international celebrity. Hyderabad is very proud of you, Sheila. And she knows that when she launched a book in Hyderabad 3 years ago, I think, the kind of response, the clubs,
At
all the
Golden
book
Threshold.
clubs and all
The book was launched in
centers
Golden
gave her.
Threshold.
Yeah, all the clubs and the centers, the Nizam Club, the book club, all of them gave her has been amazing. So, and she knows that. And we're very proud of you in Hyderabad, Sheila. So, and today your lecture has been fantastic, probably. And this particular thing, I'm going to read the report of the president of AIWC as that I'm going to read is something fantastic. I'd like people to hear and every word to sink in, because all that Sheila said is going to be in that. Such excellent English and such a great thing. I'll just start it off. Presidential address of Srimati Sarojini Naidu. Can you all hear me, please?
Yes, yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Naidu
Yes.
delivered her presidential address extempore. She said, quote, she said that after the three eloquent speakers who had preceded her, there was nothing left for her to say. Lady Sykes had struck the right keynote of the idea of women's emancipation. Lady Tata, practical always, had covered the whole ground of the possible activities of the women of today. The report of the secretary had given in detail the concrete achievements of the conference. When so many educational experts and social reformers had spoken before her, what was there left for her? And she calls herself a mere visionary, a dreamer, and a poet, to say, except to restate other phraseology, the identical things that had been put forward so ably by the other leaders, other speakers. She did not think that at any time it was her function to go into the details of life or life's manifold activities. Her special function, the function of men and women like her, was to kindle, to guard, and to cherish the ideals that made possible the achievements of humanity. She would therefore try to deal with the larger human issues that transcended race, creed, and culture and became part of the great human contribution to progress. Lady Sykes had reminded them that they were on the threshold of great political and social evolution. And if anything was prophetic of that great evolution, which was the reawakening of the womanhood of India to a sense of its long lost responsibilities and duties. 4 years ago, said Mrs. Naidu, a handful of women met in Pune, and a royal woman address which threw into the Indian world of thought ideals of fundamental import, some of which have since become realities. The following year, in another city, the royal city of Delhi, another royal woman, an older woman, a grandmother, in all the culture of Islam, led the deliberations of women. For the third time in the city, connected with the learning of Nalanda and the illumination of Buddha, another woman of royal birth gave forth inspiring ideals. And now, in this, she describes Bombay so beautifully, it is applicable even today. Quote, and now, in this cosmopolitan capital of Bombay, where all cultures, all creeds, all colors, all races find a common shelter, when all are fused into a common humanity, you have risen from royalty to democracy. You have chosen one to guide you as your president, who is a born Democrat, one who is merely the servant of a nation. I am proud of the honor you have done me. Because such honor is new to me, I have been privileged to preside over the greatest assemblage of the people of India, over the National Congress. Yet this conference is greater for me. It is the greatest international gathering in the country where we demonstrate this is so important, friends, the invisible fellowship of women in the cause of humanity. The invisible fellowship of women in the cause of humanity. Everyone who is willing to acknowledge a life debt to this great land, no matter what her religion, creed, or race, is eligible to be a member of this conference. We give the fellowship of sisterhood to the wife of the Viceroy, solely, supremely, superbly, in the same spirit as we give it to the youngest of our primary teachers or to the illiterate mother of her servants. It is because of this democratic spirit that we are making this finest contribution to the internationalism of our time. Do we hold these conferences only to pass more resolutions about primary education or more secondary schools, or to have rhetorical punctuations about social reform, or become practicing schools for women to be grafted into councils or cabinets? There are other conferences of that kind. We stand for something more, something deeper than controversies on educational or social reform, and something more profound, more intimate, more enduring in human value. The genius for human synthesis is the gift of India's women. The charge has been made against India's womanhood that her genius had been one of isolation and exclusion and passive resignation in the hands of destiny, that she was bound by mere traditions and was unable to get beyond the fetters of dead conventions and ideas. This gathering is a triumphant vindication that it is not a gift of beauty, philosophy, religion, or racial characteristic can be excluded from India's synthesis. India has extended her mother love to all. The genius of India, the whole history of her culture, has been creative and has been able to transmute even the hostility of her enemies. This conference is a proof of the indivisible quality of fellowship of all women, inclusive as is a proof of the indivisible quality of fellowship of all women, inclusive as we are, of Zoroastrian faith, Christian culture, Hindu ideals, and Muslim devotion. I think perfectly put. Such unity is necessary at this special moment, for all the circumstances of our national life must temporarily make us to be aggressively, almost exclusively nationalistic in our attitude towards life. I am a bad nationalist. I am nationalist only by the compulsion and the tragedy of the circumstances of my country. I am the first and the last human being, and I do not recognize divisions of humanity merely because of race or geographical barriers. Men have made wars and created political and economic divisions for selfish interests and created groups of friendship and hostility. But all these are temporary shifts, and the purpose of womanhood in the nation's and the world's life is to do away with these temporary barriers. We women are evangelists of peace, working for the attainment of the common rights of humanity, seeking to stop the exploitation of one nation by another, not assisting hostility, but securing the peace of equal rights for every section of humanity. The gospel of women must be the conservation of the best, the recreating of the world nearer to the heart's desire. It was as a woman of this is so important. It was as a woman of this ancient race with its millennia of experience that in my travels last year, I looked at the life of Europe and those kindergarten countries of America. They expected me to fit into their notion of what an Indian woman should be, according to them. A timid woman, a modest woman, a jump onto a chair at a mouse woman who had come to learn from them. They expected me to supplicate for help from them when they saw that I had come to them as a free woman, one who stood side by side with my comrade men, that I gave knowledge and beauty, rather that supplicated for it. They asked, "Are you a typical Indian woman?" "Yes," I cried. "I am she who carries the brass pot to the water. I am she who led armies. I am she who gave counsel to kings. I am she who showed forth all renunciation. I am she who went down to hell that her mighty country might rise. I am only the kind of the average Indian woman." We are not weak. We are not timid, meek. We women who hold the courageous Savitri as our ideal. Savitri from Aurobindo's book, ma'am. Hold the courageous Savitri as our ideal. We who know how Sita defied those who entertained suspicion of her ability to keep her chastity. We possess the spirit of creative energy to legislate for the morals of the world. I am not an educated woman. I have not passed great examinations. My mind is empty with spaces for youth and experience to fill. I think this conference is writing the history of the women of the world. I will, however, confess to you one thing. I will whisper it into the loudspeaker. I am not a feminist. To be a feminist is to acknowledge that one's life has been repressed. The demand for granting preferential treatment to women is an admission on her part of her inferiority, and there has been no need for such a thing in India. We have always been by the side of the men, both in councils and in the fields of battle. We women recognize our responsibilities in this nation. Therefore, it is that our rights are taken for granted. The consciousness of what we ought to do for our people is deep in the hearts of our men. Still, sometimes we have to struggle against the chivalry of our men who want to have protective legislation for us. We have to educate the manhood that the spiritual reform of the world is woman's great work. She, the woman, is, madam, this is so important, all of you please listen. She, the woman, is the world unchanging in a world unchanged. The world unchanging in a world unchanged. If education means anything, it is not differential calculus or the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution of Canada and all the things, wise or foolish, that depend on whether they're a wise or a foolish minister of education. But it is the larger vision of things which will produce a syllabus of studies which shall give equal opportunities for self-expression to the boy and girl alike. I oppose every separatist movement except for possible transitional proposals. The day of triumph of this conference will be that day when it will have achieved its temporary need and when it can declare there need to be no further specialized women's conferences. In future, we shall be in such a position that we may securely invite the men to work with us, and we shall have no women's or men's conferences, but people's conferences. Our best contribution to life is to add the nectar of sweetness to the wine of heroism. We must have no mutual conflict in our homes or abroad. We must transcend differences. Even patriotism is not enough. As Nurse Cavell said, we must rise above nationalism, above religion, above sex. Our common humanity is the bond that must not be broken. More and more, let us repeat, we are human. Let us identify ourselves with our soul and its capacity and its need. And as we are gathered here in this convocation hall, which is like a great vaulted cathedral consecrated to the true cause of education, let us dedicate ourselves anew to become the interpreters of the larger gospel of humanity, transcending barriers of race, creed, and land. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Ramaji. That was wonderful. This whole speech brings out the essence of what Sarojini Naidu was. her emphasis on sisterhood, on humanity, on all the the basics of what humans stand for. This is interesting. And in the end, you said there should not be any separate, dividing lines. That is so important. We have yet to achieve. Yeah, we have yet to achieve.
There where she said we should all move forward. Sheila ji, of course, will take us forward, I presume.
Yeah, she will.
I really enjoyed reading it. It's really something, ma'am, really power packed.
Invigorating. It was.
Language.
Yes.
And every sentence is quotable quote, like we say in Sanskrit,
Yeah.
akshara laksha. Everything she said carries a
Each word is
weightage and
remarkable.
meaning.
Yes.
Yeah, thank
So
you all
good.
so much.
That
Like
was a good
Sheila said,
initiative.
it was
Yeah.
extempore and excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, and the best part is it was extempore, and each word is quotable. That's amazing. That's nothing better. See, this whole thing. This is, I think, from the library, isn't it, Supriya? This is from the annual report. Yeah, thanks to Ranjana.
Thanks to you.
Yeah, if Ranjana is listening, she passed it on, and
Yeah, sure.
so we have to be. This is such a good report and such beautiful pages. Each word is remarkable in any way. We could never have enough of. I wish she was there with us today to hear all this. Anyway, I think time to go to the next item. We have a small poem reading by Soumya, right? So would you like to introduce her? Soumya is there.
Soumya is actually a poet herself. She has written poems in English and Urdu. She is a part of Little Theatre Group of Hyderabad, and she reads so much of life in it. And she's going to be our member. She's agreed to be with us, and we want these young members to come and guide us. So, Soumya, over to you.
Another Wonder Woman in the midst.
See, we have already crossed the 4:30, and then 10 minutes of poem reading, and then it will be the end.
Yeah. That's about
So
8 minutes.
all of you.
You said 8 minutes. We can fit in your PPT also.
That is not much. Small.
Let's go.
So, Soumya, please start off. Have your video on.
Am I audible?
A little louder.
Okay, am I audible? Is it better now?
Yes.
Louder.
Thank you. So I just wanted to thank, first of all, you really gave me more context to the body of these poems, and it's very difficult to narrow down which poems I want to read for 8 minutes. So without making a delay, I will start. First, I want to read a couple of folk songs. The most, and I call these songs because all of her poems are more songs to me than mere poems. They have this lyrical quality that you can set a rhythm into. And so if while reading I break into song, please don't mind. So this one's called Coromandel Fishers. Rise, brothers, rise. The wakening skies pray to the morning light. The wind lies asleep in the arms of the dawn, like a child that has cried all night. Come, let us gather our nets from the shore and set our catamarans free to capture the leaping wealth of the tide. Sea. No longer delay, let us hasten away in the track of the seagull's call. The sea is our mother, the cloud. Waves are our comrades all. What though we toss at the fall of the sun, but the hand of the sea god drives. He who holds the storm by the hair will hide in his breast our lives. Sweet is the shade of the coconut glade and the scent of the mango grove, and the sands are the full of the moon with the sound of the voices we love. Sweeter, O brothers, the kiss of the spray and the dance of the wild foam's glee. Row, brothers, row to the blue of the verge, where the low sky mates with the sea. The next one is Wandering Singers, which reminds me of the Baul singers from Bengal, who go door to door reminding people of their own mortality. And I think Sarojini Naidu also had got inspired by them. Wandering Singers, where the voice
Soumya, a little louder, please.
Okay. Voice our wandering feet through echoing forest and echoing street. With lutes in our hands, ever singing, we roam. All men are our kindred. The world is our home. Our lays are of cities whose luster is shed. The laughter and beauty of women long dead. The sword of old battles, the crown of old kings. And happy, simple, sorrowful things. What hope shall we gather? What dreams shall we sow? Where the wind calls our wandering steps, we go. No love bids us tarry, no joy bids us wait. The voice of the wind is the voice of our fate. I'm just going to put on earphones, so is this better?
Yes, Soumya, this is wonderful.
Yeah.
You're doing a great job.
All right. So I just wanted to mention here that when she was writing her folk songs, one thing that struck me was that she really started a precedent of addressing or approaching this challenge that is still there today of how to take colonial language and claim it in one's tongue and one's own. And that challenge is that paradox, that challenge is still there with poets who write in. And she unknowingly, she started this, and we can always go back to her poems to sort of get help on how to speak in our own deeply true voice. Now I'll move on to the city we all love. And I think only a person deeply, deeply in love with the city could write poem. The first one is Nightfall in the city of Hyderabad. See how the speckled sky burns like a pigeon's throat. See the white river that flashes and served like tusk from the mouth of the city. From the minaret, how the mezz fall floats like a battle flag over the wall. From trellised balcony with luminous faces with a splendor walls. The elephants wind through the wine, swing silver bells hung from their silver chains. Round the high charming cavalry, blend symbols of serenade. Over the city bridge, night, Jessica, oh, like a queen, sumptuous. That was, I think, her love poem to Hyderabad. And the next one is a very, very famous poem. I think one of her most famous poems and most popular poems about Hyderabad itself, called In the Bazaars of Hyderabad. What do you sell, O ye merchant? Richly your wares are displayed. Turbans of crimson and silver, tunics of purple brocade, mirrors with panels of amber, daggers with handles of jade. What do you weigh, O vendors? Saffron, lentil, and rice. What do you grind, O ye maids? sandalwood, henna. What all, O ye peddlers, chessmen, ivory dyes? What do you make, O ye gold? Ring bells for the feet of blue pigeons, frail as a dragonfly's. Girdles of gold for the dancers, scabbards of gold. What do you cry, O ye citron, granate, and plum? What do you play, O musician? Sitar, sarangi, and what do you chant, magician? Spells, yawns. What do you eat, O ye flower girl? With tassels pure and red, crowns for the brow of the bride, chaplets to garland his bed, sheets of white blossoms gathered to perfume the sea. So that was Sarojini Naidu at her most colorful, and this also gives us a picture of Hyderabad of yore, how beautiful it was, and how in elephants and the Moonsi River flowing forth. Now I want to move on to her her inspiration she derived from the season of spring, because all of her poems are richly scattered with imagery of Gulmohar and Champa and Sirisha, and so this poem will let you know how deeply she loved spring. Just kidding. In this spring and love, and anyone who is familiar with classical music will know this motif where sees the blossom of spring all around and pines for her lover. So this is called Basant Panchami, Lilavati's lament. Fold up your purple. Why will bring me tidings of the spring? Lilting coils, hush rapturous notes. Oh, Darikula, still your passionate throat. Or seek some further garden for your nest. Songs are poisoned arrows in my breast. Oh, quench your flame, you crimson gulmohars that flaunt your dazzling bloom across my doors. Furl your wild sweet champa buds that call wild bees to your ambrosial. Hold your breath, oh dear Sirisha trees, slay my heart with bitter memories. Oh, joyous girls who rise at break of dawn, sandals soil your thresholds to adorn. Ye brides who shivered bare on jeweled feet, your gifts of silver lamp don't be. I pray you dim your voice when you sing your radiant salutations. Hi, what have I to do with birds, with lotus honey, corn, and ivory? Planting for rose sweet lintels, rose scented fruit, lighted shrines and fragrant altar fires, where happy women breathe their heart's desires. My sad life is doomed to be ruined, sere, like sorrow-trodden grass. My heart had grown plucked, wind of grief, kin to fallen flower and faded leaf, kin every lone withered gone is up. So this is how marvelously she intermingled both pain and love. And thinking about pain, I want to move on to some of the poems most of the poems are, think of Sarojini, really bright, effervescent poems, but such a multifaceted personality she was. So of course she had written on themes of pain and death, and in all shades, not only in a mature way or in a thing, but in all themes. So this one, is I imagine this poem and Sarojini Naidu looking back at her life, sort of giving advice. It's called Life. Children, ye have not lived. It means life is a love stalactite of carnival, of careless joys that leap about your hearts like billows of the deep, flames of amity. Children, they have not lived, but exist till some resistless power shall raise and move your heart to wake, hunger after love, thirst with passionate longing for the that burn your brows, blood red suffering, till ye have battled, feared, borne the conflict, flame shattering ache, wounded with burn with strife, children, they have not for this. Children, they have not for this. I think I will have my last two poems because we are already running out of time. So there is a plethora of poems that Sarojini Naidu has. So I wanted to explore the love in Sarojini Naidu's poem. And if I could take one thing back from her poems, it is this, the theme of love. And she molds love in so many forms. In her book, The Broken Woman, she imagines love as a temple. And she is divided into three parts: the gate of delight, the path of tears, and the sanctum sanctorium. So here she basically intermingles love with worship in almost a Sufi manner. So I want to, this is part of the gate of delight. It's called the bring no fragrant sandalwood. Bring no fragrant sandalwood. Let me gather love. Entranced in flowering dust, have honored with your tread, for mine eyelids, mine hair. Bring no scented lotus wreath, moon awakened dewrest. Bring no lotus wreath, moon awakened rest. Love, through memories age long, shall my wild heart rest with your foot ravish gems from love, priceless, all sorrow of the secret of your. Grant me love, priceless food, all the sorrow of all the secret. And the final poem I want to read is called Farewell. And I imagine a poem that speaks to us beyond her life and death. Just a minute.
Soumya?
Yes.
Yeah, we're running short of time. Should we skip that?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Right. Okay.
Hmm?
I think
Yeah.
I'm done. I can't find the.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I think
yeah.
we will have it shared on WhatsApp because it sounds very interesting about the life
Yeah.
that. So,
It was a
yeah,
beautiful relation, Soumya. Amazing.
lovely,
I'm,
lovely.
I
Thank
just
you.
felt we can have a separate program for you. So,
We have a Sarojini Naidu poem night because
yes,
so many good
you were so
like
You have the book with you, so
another time. Sure.
thank you so
Thank you so much. It was great.
yeah,
Thank you so much.
yeah. Thank you.
So I would request
Uh,
Supriya to now move forward and take us to towards the end of the program. It's
Yeah, now actually, I have very small 3 items to be packed in 5 minutes. One of the first one, actually, one of the exciting one is our patron Kunti Paul has managed to send us a message. It was really nice, and let me just share it with you.
and then your PPT, right?
Yeah, PPT, of course.
Quickly, yeah, with that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I just am studying. I kept it open. In fact.
You have called such good speakers that it's difficult to contain this program within the time limit. I wish we had more time, but everyone was so good. We could have a
Here
third
it
day
is.
also. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's fine. Yeah. No, we can't hear Supriya.
Ah,
No, we can't hear anything. Can you increase the
no,
volume?
there's no sound.
No sound. No sound.
What happened? There was no sound?
No, no sound. You can retry or just
I'll just try, or otherwise I'll put it on WhatsApp.
yeah, we can hear that. Fine. Then we
You
see
can
your
hear
PPT.
it? Can you hear?
No, no, no.
You
We
can't
can't
hear?
hear.
Okay.
No. So you put it on the group. Yeah.
I think, yeah. We do that.
Just now.
Huh?
And then show us your PPT, right?
Yes, yes.
I wish we could hear
I
her.
have to,
That's a pity.
yes. I have to give you a glimpse of how Sarojini Naidu used to speak outside India. So that also, I've got a small little bit here.
It was also clear from her speech at the AIWC annual conference what she said outside. People said that, "Oh, are you the essence, the average Indian
Can you
woman?"
see?
She said, "Yes, I
Yeah.
am."
Can you see this?
Yes,
Can you
yes,
hear this?
yes.
Yeah, we can.
Can you make it more down? Like, yeah, full screen. Yeah. No, but we can't hear. No, there's no sound.
Can't hear. Maybe you could send it on WhatsApp.
Oh,
I think we all
no.
received on WhatsApp already.
Oh yeah, this is the one I saw on our national.
This is on WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Can I skip this?
Yes.
You can't hear? I'll skip it.
Yes. Anyway, she had the courage to call the other countries kindergarten, nursery, and say that India is an ancient country. Such proficiency. That was something very proud of.
In those days, imagine.
Yes. And then now we acknowledge their culture, we borrow their culture, we bring them across here.
Especially that
Now
makes
they're all taking on.
Yes, lots of guts to say that we were a colony at that time. Still, she went ahead and said that. Something like what Swami Vivekananda did.
Yes, she's almost on parallel.
Can you see this?
Yes, we can. This is good.
Yes.
Yeah, great. Nice colors.
Yeah.
This was when she was very young, right?
Yeah, yeah.
There's the next.
This is it. So
Yeah.
I don't have to talk much about it. This is Sarojini Chattopadhyay, her childhood photo. We have her two brothers here. And Kamala Devi Chattopadhyay was Harindranath Chattopadhyay's wife. That is the sister-in-law.
Yesterday,
have,
Professor. So,
yeah. Sarojini Naidu's family, she got married, she came into this golden threshold, that is the home they made. And this is her husband, Dr. Sarojini Naidu. We see in the next picture, we see her in her family with Jawaharlal Nehru, sons, Jayasuriya and Randhira, and the daughter Leelamani. Next picture, you see
Padmaja. With Dr. Padmaja, right?
Yes, yes. This is poet. This is actually I could get at this picture of poetry reading, the way she used to do it. This picture, I felt, she's looking quite dreamy as she was.
This is nice. Very nice. Where did you get it from?
Yeah, I got them. I collected them over a few days of time. And now there is, she died in 1949. 1947, we got the freedom. Till that time, we have seen her only in the freedom struggle movement. She actually worked very little for AIWC. So this is her trips abroad. I'm going to put up that post where Sarojini is talking in one of the speeches outside, which I tried. So this is Cape Town, South Africa, and two of Britain. This one is her participation in meetings. One of which is Subhash Chandra Bose, and others, the Nehru, Judge, and Maulana Azad.
Yeah, yeah.
Then,
this was
comes
history.
Mahatma Gandhi. Before again, she was at England, Women's Indian Council, where she actually talked to many Indian women up there.
Louder, Supriya.
Pardon?
Speak louder.
Louder? Yeah.
Speak louder. Continue the pictures.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yes. There are only a few. That's actually the end. Her personality with grace, creativity, and confidence. I feel, she oozed the confidence. Actually, there was one old lady of Hyderabad here. She told me that Sarojini Naidu, when she went to visit her with her mother, the mother and Sarojini Naidu were speaking, talking, chatting amongst themselves. Suddenly, Sarojini Naidu comes to her and pats on her back, and she said, "Sit up straight. You should always be straight. Your head up high." To a little school-going girl, she gives this message, and the lady shared it with me. So this is what I wanted to say. Yeah, thank you.
That's lovely, Supriya. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It was great collection. I hope it lands up in the library. Ultimately,
I will. Yes, I will actually. I'll send across all these to your archives. Whatever we have presented yesterday and today, I'll make it in a better form and send it to you.
And if you can just quote the sources below, from where all, maybe did you take it from the net? That will be important. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. And it was a great pleasure. I would request Supriya to just give the vote of thanks and close the program.
Mrs. Sheila, our president wanted to say a word.
Yeah, Sheila, would you like to say something?
I think she's gone.
Yes. Yes.
Would you like to say something
now? It was definitely a wonderful presentation. We really had a feast for 2 days, and we have to learn so many things from all these solvers that we are presenting. This was the 4th of the webinar, 4th president of AIWC. Each one has some quality or the other. And I feel if our members they pick up one quality from each one of them and nurture in their own self. It will be really good to bring out our name and fame of AIWC. Please, wonderful. Thank you much. I am really grateful to all other webinar holders also, those who presented for Chimnabai Gaikwad, our first president, then Bhopal Maharani, Bhopal Begum Saiba, and Mandi Maharani. All of them, I'm so grateful. And Supriya, you are joining them now. And you have done lovely work on your invites, royal invites for all the webinars, all the presidents. That was also very good. And claps for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, it was very good. I really like it. Yutika, you are a wonderful moderator. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Yes.
All due to you. Thank you.
And I'm really wishing that our next webinars on all the presidents also will be very, very interesting. We're coming up with Dr. Muthulakshmi Reddy in the next month. By the end of the month, you will get the wonderful. Yes, you can.
And Sheilaji, we wish everyone Happy New Year also, and a new courage, new enthusiasm.
Very, very happy New Year to all of you. That I wish on first of January. Yes. Okay. Go on. Carry on.
Did I give vote of thanks?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. First, actually,
Supriya just asked Sheila Reddy if she has anything to say for a second, because she cut off towards the end without tapering her talk. If she wants to say anything about your program, if she's still there.
Thank you so much.
Sheila Reddy ji, are you still there?
Yeah.
Would you like to say anything? I'm now,
No.
मैं अभी आपको thank you बोलने जा रही हूँ formally. Yeah, please say.
No, I had nothing to say. I don't think I was cut off. My last line was that he paid a price for it, and that was it. But it was a life worth living.
You did convey that.
Sheilaji, can I say something to you? See, on 13 February, like yesterday I mentioned, you must have heard also, on 13 February, we celebrate in our head office in Delhi, Sarojini Naidu's birthday. One of the birthdays we can celebrate with you, definitely. To have more from you about Sarojini ji.
I'll feel very.
We are also celebrating in our branch.
Okay.
Yes, sure. Yeah, Kalpana ji. Yes.
Yes, we are also celebrating in our branch.
Yeah, very nice.
Very good. We can get connected like this and have a word from Sheila ji. We can have more.
Supriya ji, very nice, unique.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For appreciating.
I have to thank you all for attending it.
Yes.
That's what I am now going to do it. Let me formally thank all the people who were involved in this. I thank our National President, Mrs. Sheila Kakde, National Secretary General, Mrs. Purjit Kaur, and National Treasurer, Mrs. Rehana ji, for being there with us all the time and guiding us. I'm grateful to today's speaker, Mrs. Sheila Reddy, for agreeing to speak in this session on Sarojini Naidu and giving us a lot of information on Sarojini Naidu's life, especially the things that were lesser known to us. I thank Mrs. Rama Anantaram, our past zonal organizer, for reading out Sarojini Naidu's powerful speech, presidential address, given in our annual conference of AIWC of 1930. I also thank Mrs. Geeta Chaudhary, our branch treasurer, for introducing today's speaker. I thank Soumya V, for presenting the poems beautifully. And I think we can have another presentation by her later. I thank our patron Kunti Palti for sending across that message at the last moment. What a effort she put in. I'm on WhatsApp now itself after some time because people could not hear it. And to all the participants, our patrons, Mrs. Beena Jain, Mrs. Beena Kohli, our Vice President, including Ashita of our South Zones in charge, zonal organizers, including our Varaprasad, under her this branch comes, all the MICs and committee members, all the participants. We are grateful to you. Because of you, this program it could happen. You have to be thanked profusely for moderating in that beautiful manner. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Supriya. I think the last pleasure is mine. I have to thank Supriya for everything.
You don't have to thank me. I actually have done it.
Hyderabad branch again, Farida ji and everyone. Thank you so much, Hyderabad. It was amazing. And we meet next month in the last week again with the next session. And I would expect Sheila Reddy ji and Soumya to join us again and here, we go on till we cover all the presidents. And that would be a pleasure if you could join us again. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, thank you, Rajesh. Can we close the program? Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.